you're seeing a lot of people, like prominent people, like embrace the violence. And so that's going to turn into something way, way too dark. You know, I don't know where that goes, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, everyone makes fun of Tim for talking about Civil War and stuff.
They make fun of him for it?
Oh, because he says it like every episode.
Oh, does
it's going to be Civil War.
Oh,
know?
really? Oh,
because he's always
okay,
looking. He's looking at like how society has been breaking down and politics has driven this divide between us, and now people are willing to do violence. We saw a lot of that during like the riots in 2020. We saw assassinations. We saw assassination attempts on presidents.
Yeah.
And you just look at Mexico. I think they assassinated 23 of their own presidential.
Yeah.
You know,
people running for president.
Dude, that's insane.
It's insane.
And that's just right there, you know?
Yeah.
So this willingness to violence is really picking up steam. And you're seeing like people like understand violence.
How does he think a civil war will play out in the US?
I think his idea would be like, it's not going to be like I think when he says it, people expect it to be like, we're going to march towards each other. It's going to be like Grant, Lincoln. I think he sees like pockets of violence across the country that will be ideological, right? And it'll be, but you know, whatever camps, the left versus right, like that's a vague descriptor these days because they're all fractured. But I think it's like a willingness for political violence. And I also think it'll be, in my opinion, I don't know if he thinks this, but like in my opinion, a lot of it will be bolstered by the government, right? Like you think if you know Northwoods is possible, or at least they thought of it, then I will be skeptical of most things, right?
Yeah.
And like there was basically a civil war in Italy. You know about the years of lead? So in Italy, I want to say this is like from the 60s to the 80s, there was just insane false flag operations against the opposing political sides, right? And so it was like real things, real violence, bombs, shootings, kidnappings, people died, but a lot of it was done as false flags from like the opposing side, you know, to then what a Northwoods would have done, right? We're going to blow up our own people, shoot our own people to convince them that we have to go to war with Cuba, right? And that was Lemnitzer, right? The guy who brought that idea to Kennedy, and Kennedy fired. And Lemnitzer's next job was NATO. And a lot of people say NATO might have had a hand in the false flag operations during the years of lead in Italy, which are very similar to what he proposed with Northwoods.
Wow.
So like, you know, I think a lot of things are possible knowing that if we're moving towards violence and the people in charge, I think it's beyond bipartisan. Like it's not just like a right versus left thing. I think there's like a uniparty, for lack of a better word, and they are deeply entrenched, and it's the bureaucratic state that's been there forever, right? That has a lot of power. So with these talking heads, these figureheads, they come and go, right? You get voted in and out, and then you get a book deal or a job at CNN or whatever, or Newsmax, you know? But like these people who are there for so long, they want that power. They want the power over us. They love the stuff like Palantir and Clearview. And, they totally have the idea of false flags at their disposal. So if we're moving towards some type of a sustained violence in this country against one another, like a civil war, but in more fragmented, you know, pockets of the country, like the years of lead in Italy, it does seem like it's possible. And I'm just basing that off what I saw during the 2020 summer riots. You know, you're seeing cities burn. You're seeing politicians donate money to bail out arsonists, like Kamala. You know, like she had staff donating money to arsonists to get out of jail. And like, in my opinion, I see a lot of this violence, this terrorism, domestic terrorism, being born out of the universities, like because they're like ideological death camps that produce a lot of mental illness. You know, it sucked being a part of that university, the college world for so long, and you're totally powerless. Like you can do your best. I want to just teach kids things like how to read, you know, how to write, have good skills, but then you're watching professors all around you being like Marxism. So like when I'm saying it's come out of the universities, I'm saying like, this is the line I see in my mind to war now as we see it, or like the pockets of real domestic terrorism during 2020. The Weather Underground, domestic terrorists, Marxists from like the 60s and 70s, they, I don't think they killed a lot of people, but they killed some. I think they killed themselves by accident. They were building bombs and stuff. They were Marxists. They believed in we should destroy this system. And a lot of them became fugitives, and a lot of them went to jail. And then Bill Clinton pardoned one on his last day in office, straight up domestic terrorist, Susan Rosenberg. And then my old genocidal maniac governor, Cuomo, pardoned Weather Underground person on his last day in office. And you'll see like a bunch of them that were let out. And what did they end up doing? I forget that one guy's name who was pardoned early on with Clinton as well. Bill something. But they all become professors, and they all start to infiltrate the universities, because that then goes in hand with what Yuri Bezmenov was saying about taking care. How do you ideologically subvert this society? Oh, this country has said you need to go to college. We're going to take that over and totally destroy your brains now and turn you into soldiers for us. So I see a lot of the issues, a lot of the violence, a lot of people, the nihilism being born out of the universities, and then to connect that to the summer of what they call the summer of love. Act Blue was funneling a lot of that money to the organizations on the ground doing the protesting. Act Blue was part of Thousand Currents. Thousand Currents was on the board with Susan Rosenberg. So it's like a domestic terrorist who's been pardoned, working with laundering money to today's domestic terrorists. And they both had, and the BLM, those two women said they were Marxists. So it's like a very clear line in my mind of domestic terrorism and war and against the American people, So I don't know how you fight that, because I don't want to censor those ideas. That's some people would say, well, we just get rid of them, exile them. I don't think that's the way to do it, because evil will always come back. It's always going to pop back up. It's going to have to teach like the kids how to have a better foundation and how to counter that in there as they grow up. And hopefully not with the surveillance state, but that'll be there too. Because there's no escaping it. But yeah, I don't know. That's I guess the way Tim would see it in terms of fragmented civil war. I guess I feel like we've been the government's been at war with the American people for decades. I think we've been like an invisible war, like a war on our reality, a war on our brains. I think like the technocracy has probably already been in place, in many ways. Like people argued, like I think I said, the FDR was kind of like, that was like a soft technocracy, but like, we started talking about JFK at the beginning of the episode. That's a very symbolic day that he died. Obviously, the day he died is a very symbolic day. But it's interesting in my mind, symbolically, because two other people died that day who were also very opposed to the technological state, and that's Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, who, although he was a eugenicist, Brave New World is kind of like a cautionary tale of this insane world. And C.S. Lewis also died that day, same day, and he wrote one of the greatest essays. He wrote one of the greatest essays on the fears of this technological state, called the the Willing Slaves of the Welfare State. Two writers I really look up to, but it's just very interesting, that JFK, and I think he was taken out by the military-industrial complex, whatever that is in your mind. So I think like there's been a war on the American people since definitely that day, and outwardly so. Probably started. You could say you go back to Woodrow Wilson and all this stuff, and say it started then too, for sure. But I think it accelerated that day, and it never stopped. And whatever's happening now is part of this like giant umbrella of war that our government's been waging against us forever. But I'm optimistic. I still have.
We're gonna have to move to the Amazon.
Yeah, I might not be safe there either.
Maybe not.
They're taking over everywhere. They're cutting down the trees. But no, I despite all the darkness in the world, I still have like hope for the future. I have hope for the kids, and I don't think it's inescapable, but it's just life moves on no matter what. We'll be fine. They just might read your thoughts.
Right.
So you just have to train yourself better at thinking.
Sleep tight.